A police officer rescues a baby girl from a trash bin, but years later, he is shaken by tragic news. Hello. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below. Enjoy the story. James, a 32-year-old police officer in Los Angeles, had just finished his dinner at a nearby diner and decided to take a walk before heading home. The cool night air felt refreshing as he strolled through the dimly lit streets, lost in thought about his new girlfriend. They had only been dating for 2 weeks, but he already felt like he had known her for years. He was even starting to think about their future together, possibly even starting a family someday. As he turned down a quiet alley, his thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a sound that sent chills down his spine. A baby crying. He stopped dead in his tracks, straining to listen more clearly. The cries continued, faint but unmistakable. His heart raced as he looked around, trying to locate the source of the distressing sound. Following the cries, James hurried toward a row of trash bins lined up against a brick wall. The closer he got, the louder the cries became. He reached the last bin and hesitated for a moment, fearing what he might find. Taking a deep breath, he lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in dirty blankets, was a tiny baby girl, her face red and scrunched up as she cried. James's heart broke at the sight. He couldn't fathom how someone could abandon a baby like this. He gently lifted her from the trash bin and cradled her in his arms. Her cries began to soften as he held her close, trying to soothe her. "Hey there, it's okay. I've got you now," he whispered, feeling an overwhelming need to protect her. The baby was burning up, her small body warm to the touch. James quickly checked her for injuries, but she seemed physically unharmed. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his voice urgent as he explained the situation. 911, what's your emergency? Hi, this is Officer James Harrison. I just found a baby in a trash bin. She's alive, but she seems to have a fever. We need an ambulance at the corner of 5th and Elm right away. Officer Harrison, an ambulance is on its way. Please stay with the baby until they arrive. James hung up and focused on the baby, who was now looking up at him with large, tear-filled eyes. He couldn't help but feel a connection to her, a protective instinct he'd never experienced before. He gently rocked her, murmuring comforting words. "Who left you here, sweetie? How could anyone do this to you?" he said softly, his heart aching for her. The minutes felt like hours as he waited for the ambulance. He played with her tiny fingers, trying to keep her calm. She looked at him, her cries now reduced to occasional sobs. "You're so precious. I don't know who did this to you, but I'm here now. I'll make sure you're safe," he promised. Finally, the sound of a siren approached, and James felt a wave of relief. The ambulance arrived, and 2 paramedics rushed over with a stretcher. James explained how he had found the baby, and they carefully took her from his arms, placing her on the stretcher. "She has a fever, but I didn't see any visible injuries," James told them. "We'll take her to the hospital and run some tests," one of the paramedics said. "Thank you for staying with her." "I'll follow you to the hospital," James said, unwilling to leave the baby alone. At the hospital, the baby was quickly taken to the emergency room. James called his supervisor to explain the situation and was given permission to stay with the baby. He anxiously waited in the lobby, pacing back and forth. The connection he felt to this abandoned baby was unlike anything he had ever experienced, and he couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor came out to speak with him. "The baby is stable for now," the doctor said. "She has a mild case of pneumonia, likely due to exposure. We're administering antibiotics and monitoring her closely." "Thank you, doctor. Can I see her?" James asked, his voice filled with concern. "Yes, you can. She's in room 204, the doctor replied. James hurried to the room, finding the baby resting in a small crib, connected to several monitors. She looked so small and vulnerable. He pulled up a chair and sat by her side, gently stroking her cheek. "Hey there, you're going to be okay. The doctors are taking good care of you," he said softly. The baby opened her eyes and looked at him, her expression seeming to relax at the sound of his voice. Over the next few days, James visited the hospital every day, checking on the baby's progress. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to be in her life. As he spent more time with her, he he found himself becoming more and more attached. He started thinking about what it would be like to take her home, to care for her, and give her the love and protection she deserved. His visits didn't go unnoticed by the hospital staff. One nurse, in particular, Claire, noticed his dedication and struck up a conversation with him one evening. "You care a lot, don't you?" Claire asked with a kind smile on her face. "Yes," James admitted. "I don't know why, but I feel a strong connection to her. I can't just walk away." "Have you thought about what will happen next? If no one comes to claim her, she might end up in the foster care system," Claire said gently. The idea of the baby being placed in foster care and possibly bouncing from home to home made James's heart ache. He knew what he had to do. "I want to adopt her," he said firmly. "I'll go through whatever process I need to, but I want to give her a home." Claire smiled. "That's wonderful, James. She'd be lucky to have you as her father." James spent the next few days gathering information on the adoption process and speaking with social workers. He wanted to be prepared for any step he had to take. Meanwhile, the baby, whom he had started calling Emma, continued to improve under the hospital's care. One night, as he was sitting next to her crib, Emma reached out and wrapped her tiny fingers around his finger, looking up at him with big, trusting eyes. James felt a surge of love and determination. "I promise to take care of you, Emma. I'll give you the life you deserve," he whispered, knowing that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet imagine. James spent most of his time at the hospital over the following days. He had taken some time off work to be with the baby, who had been diagnosed with mild pneumonia. She was being treated with antibiotics and was slowly starting to improve. Every day, James visited her, sitting by her crib and talking to her, even though she couldn't understand a word he was saying. He just wanted her to feel safe and loved. The nurses and doctors began to recognize James, and he quickly became a familiar face in the pediatric ward. One nurse, Claire, would often stop by to check on the baby and James. She had a soft spot for the dedicated officer who was always there for the little one. "You're here again, James," Claire said with a smile as she entered the room. "You know, she's starting to recognize you. She seems to calm down every time you come in." James looked up from the crib where he had been gently stroking the baby's hand. "I hope so. I just want her to know she's not alone, that someone cares about her." Claire nodded, her eyes kind. "You're doing a great job. She needs that kind of reassurance, especially after what she's been through." James appreciated Claire's words, but he had other things on his mind. His girlfriend, Emma, had been less than understanding about the whole situation. He had told her about the baby the night he found her, hoping for sympathy or at least some understanding. Instead, Emma's reaction had been cold and dismissive. "James, you can't be serious," she had said when he first mentioned the idea of adopting the baby. "This isn't your responsibility. Someone else can take care of her." "But I found her, Emma. I feel responsible for her," James had argued. "I can't just walk away." Emma had crossed her arms, a look of irritation on her face. "And what about us? What about our plans? You're willing to throw all of that away for a baby you found in a trash bin?" The conversation had ended in frustration, with Emma storming out of his apartment. Since then, things had been tense between them. James knew Emma didn't understand why he felt so strongly about the baby, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to care for her. Every day, as he sat by the baby's crib, he thought about their future and what it would be like with her in it. He imagined taking her to the park, teaching her to ride a bike, and watching her grow up. These thoughts made him smile, but they also filled him with uncertainty. Adopting a baby was a huge responsibility, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. But every time he looked into her big, trusting eyes, he knew he couldn't abandon her. One night, James was sitting in the hospital room, holding the baby's tiny hand when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma. "We need to talk." James sighed, knowing that this conversation was long overdue. He kissed the baby's forehead and whispered, "I'll be back soon, little one," before leaving the hospital. He met Emma at a coffee shop a few blocks away. She was already sitting, looking at her phone, her expression unreadable. James sat down across from her, feeling a knot in his stomach. "Hi," he said, trying to keep his tone light. Emma looked up, her eyes cold. "Hi." There was a moment of awkward silence before Emma spoke again. "James, We need to sort this out. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. I know, James replied, his voice low, but I can't leave her, Emma. I feel like she needs me. Emma's expression hardened. And what about me, James? What about what I need? I didn't sign up for this. I thought we were starting a life together, just the two of us. Now you're talking about adopting a baby that's not even yours. James felt a surge of frustration. Emma, it's not that simple. I found her in a trash bin. Someone left her there to die. I can't just walk away and pretend I never found her. Emma shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. I can't do this, James. I can't be with someone who would choose a stranger's baby over his own girlfriend. James's heart sank. He had hoped Emma would change her mind, but it was clear she wouldn't. Emma, please, I'm not choosing anyone over you. I'm just trying to do what's right. Emma stood up, grabbing her purse. I need time to think, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know if I can be a part of this. James watched her walk out of the coffee shop, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. He knew his relationship with Emma was on the brink of collapse, but he couldn't turn his back on the baby who needed him. In the following days, James continued visiting the hospital, spending as much time as he could with the baby. He had decided to name her Emma. It just felt right, as if she had always been Emma, even before he found her. The name brought him a sense of comfort and familiarity. One afternoon, as he was sitting by Emma's crib, Claire came in with a stack of papers. James, I thought you'd want to see this, she said, handing him the documents. James looked them over, realizing they were adoption papers. He looked at Claire, a mixture of gratitude and anxiety in his eyes. Thank you, Claire. I didn't know where to start with all of this. Claire smiled warmly. I figured you might need a little help. I can put you in touch with a social worker who can guide you through the process. You're doing something wonderful, James. Emma is lucky to have you. James nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. He looked at Emma, who was sleeping peacefully. I just want to give her a good life, he said quietly. As the days passed, James began the long and complicated process of adopting Emma. He filled out forms, met with social workers, and prepared for the challenges ahead. Throughout it all, he continued visiting Emma every day, growing more attached to her with each moment. The absence of Emma weighed heavily on him, but he knew he had made the right decision. Emma needed him, and he couldn't abandon her, no matter the personal cost. One night, as James was sitting by Emma's crib, Claire came in with a small smile. I have good news. Emma is responding well to the treatment. If all goes well, she should be able to go home in a few days. James felt a wave of relief and joy. That's amazing news, Claire. Thank you. Claire nodded. She's a fighter, just like her new dad. James looked at Emma, feeling a deep sense of love and commitment. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face it for Emma's sake. She had already become the most important part of his life, and he was determined to give her the love and care she deserved. As he held Emma's tiny hand, James whispered, We're going to be okay, Emma. I promise. He knew there were still many challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of hope and purpose. He had found his calling, and it was wrapped up in the fragile, little life he had saved. Emma had been fuming ever since James told her about the baby he found. She couldn't understand why he felt such a strong connection to the girl, and her patience was wearing thin. Every conversation about the baby ended in an argument, and James could feel the strain it was putting on their relationship. One night, James was at the hospital as usual, sitting by Emma's crib. She was getting better every day, and the doctors were optimistic that she would make a full recovery. James was feeding her when his phone buzzed with a message from Emma. We need to talk now. James sighed, knowing it wouldn't be a pleasant conversation. He gently placed Emma back in her crib and kissed her forehead. I'll be back soon, little one, he whispered before heading out to meet Emma in the hospital lobby. Emma was already there, pacing back and forth with her arms tightly crossed over her chest. The moment she saw James, her face twisted into a scowl. James, this has to stop, she said in a low, angry voice. You're spending all your time here with that baby. What about us? What about our relationship? James tried to stay calm, but he could feel his own frustration rising. Emma, I've explained this to you. I found her abandoned in a trash bin. I can't just leave her." "Why not?" Emma snapped. "It's not your responsibility. Someone else can take care of her. We had plans, James. We were supposed to start a life together, just the two of us. Now you're throwing all of that away for a baby that isn't even yours." James shook his head, struggling to find the right words. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm trying to do the right thing. Emma needs me, and I can't turn my back on her." Emma's eyes flashed with anger. "You know what it looks like, right? A white cop with a black baby. People are going to talk. They're going to think I'm sterile or that you're cheating on me. This is humiliating. Is that what you care about?" James asked, his voice rising. "What people might think. Emma, this isn't about us. It's about an innocent baby who was left to die. How can you be so selfish?" "You're the selfish one, James," Emma nearly shouted. "You're choosing her over me. You're choosing a baby you just found over the woman you've been with for months." A few people in the lobby turned to look, sensing the tension between them. James lowered his voice, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Emma, please, let's not do this here." "No, let's do it here," Emma insisted, her voice still loud enough to draw attention. "Everyone should know what kind of person you are. You're abandoning your girlfriend for a stranger's baby. Do you hear how crazy that sounds?" James felt his patience wearing thin. "Emma, if you can't understand why I need to do this, then maybe we shouldn't be together. I thought you were someone who cared about others, but clearly, I was wrong." Emma's face turned red with rage. "So that's it? You're choosing her over me?" "I'm choosing to do what's right," James said firmly. "If you can't support me in that, then yes, I'm choosing her over you." Emma glared at him for a moment, her eyes filled with fury and hurt. Without another word, she turned and stormed out of the hospital, leaving James standing there, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his emotions before returning to Emma's room. As he walked down the hallway, he couldn't help but feel a weight lift off his shoulders. The constant arguments with Emma had been exhausting, and now that she was gone, he felt a sense of clarity and purpose. When he reached Emma's room, he found Claire there, checking on the baby. She looked up as he entered, noticing the tension in his face. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. James nodded, though he didn't feel entirely okay. "Emma and I just broke up," he said quietly, not wanting to go into too much detail. Claire gave him a sympathetic look. "I'm sorry to hear that, James, but if it's any comfort, I think you're making the right decision. Emma needs you, and you're doing an incredible job." "Thanks, Claire," James said, feeling a bit more confident. He walked over to Emma's crib and looked down at her. She was sleeping, her little chest rising and falling with each breath. Seeing her so peaceful brought a sense of calm to James's turbulent thoughts. He knew that adopting Emma would be a big challenge, but he was ready for it. The love he felt for her was already stronger than anything he had ever felt before, and he couldn't imagine his life without her. He leaned down and kissed her forehead again, whispering, "I'm here for you, Emma, always." In the days that followed, James threw himself into the adoption process with renewed determination. He met with social workers, filled out mountains of paperwork, and prepared his home for Emma's arrival. Every day, he visited the hospital, spending as much time as he could with her. Claire and the rest of the hospital staff continued to be supportive, helping him navigate the complex process. They saw the bond between James and Emma growing stronger every day, and everyone was rooting for him to succeed. One afternoon, James was sitting by Emma's crib, reading her a story when Claire came in with a big smile on her face. "James, I have good news," she said. "The adoption process is moving faster than expected. If all goes well, you could be taking Emma home in just a few weeks." James felt a surge of excitement and relief. "That's incredible news, Claire. Thank you for everything you've done to help us." Claire waved off his thanks. "You're the one doing the hard work, James. Emma is lucky to have you." James looked at Emma, who was watching him with big, curious eyes. "No, I'm the lucky one," he said softly. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me." As the weeks passed, James continued preparing for Emma's homecoming. He set up a crib in his room, bought baby clothes and supplies, and even took some parenting classes to make sure he was ready for the challenges ahead. Finally, The day came when he could bring Emma home. He arrived at the hospital early, full of nerves and excitement. Claire and a few other nurses were there to see them off, helping James get Emma settled into her car seat. "Take good care of her," Claire said, giving James a hug. "And don't be a stranger. Bring her back to visit us sometimes." "I will," James promised, feeling a lump in his throat. "Thank you for everything, Claire." He carefully placed Emma in the car and buckled her in, making sure she was secure. As he drove home, he couldn't help but glance at the rearview mirror, smiling every time he saw her little face. When they arrived home, James carried Emma inside and showed her around. "Welcome home, Emma," he said, his voice full of emotion. He took her to her new crib, placing her down gently and watching as she looked around, taking in her new surroundings. James felt a deep sense of satisfaction and joy. This was the beginning of their new life together, and he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the days that followed, James and Emma settled into a new routine. He quickly learned how to take care of her needs, from feeding and changing diapers to soothing her when she cried. Each day brought new challenges, but also new joys, as he watched Emma grow and develop. One night, as he rocked Emma to sleep, James thought about everything that had happened since he found her. The breakup with Emma had been painful, but it had also made him realize what was truly important. He had found his purpose in caring for Emma, and he wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. As Emma drifted off to sleep, James whispered, "Good night, my little Emma. I love you." He knew their journey was just beginning, but he was ready to face it with all the love and determination he had. Balancing his duties as a police officer and caring for Emma was no easy task, but James was determined to make it work. His days became a juggling act of early morning feedings, late-night diaper changes, and everything in between. He had taken a few weeks off after officially adopting Emma, but now it was time to return to the precinct. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face any challenge that came his way. On his first day back, James walked into the precinct with a sense of determination. He had left Emma with a trusted neighbor who had agreed to help with childcare during his shifts. As he made his way to his desk, he was met with a mix of reactions from his colleagues. Some gave him nods of support, while others whispered among themselves, casting curious glances his way. "Hey, James, good to see you back," called Officer Daniels, one of his close friends on the force. "How's fatherhood treating you?" James smiled, grateful for the friendly face. "Thanks, Daniels. It's definitely a challenge, but Emma is worth it." Daniels grinned and clapped him on the back. "I bet she is. If you need any help or advice, you know where to find me." But not everyone was so supportive. Sergeant Williams, a gruff, old-school cop, made his opinion clear the moment James passed by him. "So, you're the guy who adopted a baby he found in the trash," Williams said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "Don't you think that's a bit much, even for you?" James stopped and turned to face him, keeping his voice calm. "I did what I thought was right, Sergeant. Emma needed a home, and I couldn't turn my back on her. Well, I hope you're ready for the long haul. Being a single dad and a cop isn't exactly a walk in the park. I know it won't be easy, but I'm committed to making it work," James replied firmly. He knew there would be detractors, but he wasn't going to let them shake his resolve. As the days turned into weeks, James found a rhythm in his new life. He woke up early to feed Emma and get her ready before dropping her off at the neighbor's house, then headed to work, where he tried to focus on his duties while constantly thinking about Emma and wondering how she was doing. During his lunch breaks, he would call to check in and make sure everything was okay. His colleagues soon realized that James was serious about his responsibilities as a father. Many of them warmed to the idea, offering their support and even advice on childcare. Officer Gomez, who had 3 kids of his own, became a valuable resource for James. "Hey, James, you've got this," Gomez said one afternoon as they grabbed coffee. "Being a parent is tough, but it's also the most rewarding job you'll ever have. Just take it one day at a time." James appreciated the advice and the camaraderie that began to develop among his fellow officers. It made the tough days a little easier to bear. However, judgment from some corners of the precinct still lingered. One day, James overheard a conversation in the break room. Officers Williams and Hernandez were talking, and their voices carried through the door. "I don't know why he's doing this to himself," Williams said. Adopting a baby he found? It's like he's asking for trouble. Yeah, Hernandez agreed. I mean, it's a noble thing and all, but doesn't he realize how hard it's going to be? Especially with a job like ours. James felt a pang of frustration, but chose to ignore it. He had enough on his plate without worrying about what others thought. His priority was Emma, and he was determined to give her the best life possible. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, James picked up Emma and took her home. As he fed her dinner, he thought about the challenges he had faced and the ones that were still to come. Emma giggled and reached for his face, her tiny fingers grasping his nose. Her laughter was contagious, and James couldn't help but smile. "You're my little miracle. You know that?" he said softly, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "We're in this together, little one." When Emma finished her meal, James got her ready for bed. He had set up a cozy crib in his bedroom, wanting her close by during the night. After reading her a bedtime story, he watched as her eyes slowly closed, her breathing calm and steady. Seeing her sleep so peacefully filled James with a sense of purpose and resolve. The next morning, James was woken by the sound of Emma babbling in her crib. He smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Despite the exhaustion and constant juggling act, moments like these made it all worth it. At the precinct, things began to settle into a routine. James's colleagues saw firsthand his dedication, and slowly, they began to respect his decision. Even Sergeant Williams, who had been skeptical from the start, seemed to soften his stance. One day, as James was filing a report, Williams approached him. "Harrison," he grunted, "I might not agree with what you did, but I see you're putting in the effort. Just make sure it doesn't interfere with the job, okay?" James nodded, appreciating the gesture. "It won't, Sergeant. Thanks." Outside of work, James found support in unexpected places. His neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, who had agreed to watch Emma, became a close ally. She was a retired nurse and had a wealth of knowledge about childcare. She offered advice, helped with babysitting, and even cooked meals for them sometimes. "You're doing a great job, James," Mrs. Lopez said one afternoon as they watched Emma play with some toys. "You're a natural." James smiled, feeling grateful for her support. "I couldn't do it without you, Mrs. Lopez. Thank you for everything." As the months went by, James and Emma adapted to their new life. The routine of balancing work and parenthood became second nature to him. He learned to appreciate the little moments, like Emma's first steps and her infectious laughter. One day, James received a call from the daycare he had enrolled Emma in. He had been worried about leaving her in someone else's care, but he knew it was necessary with his unpredictable work schedule. "Mr. Harrison, Emma is doing very well," the daycare director said. "She's adjusting nicely and making friends. You should be proud." James felt a wave of relief. "Thank you. That means a lot." At the precinct, James's dedication didn't go unnoticed. His supervisor saw how he managed his responsibilities and continued to perform his duties diligently. He was even considered for a promotion, something that had seemed unattainable just a few months earlier. During a meeting with his captain, James was informed, "Harrison, you've shown incredible commitment both at work and in your personal life. We're considering offering you a leadership position. What do you think about that?" James felt surprised but grateful. "It would be an honor, Captain. Thank you." The support from his colleagues and the recognition from his superiors boosted James's confidence. He realized that despite the challenges, he was capable of managing his responsibilities and providing a loving home for Emma. One night, after putting Emma to bed, James sat with a cup of coffee and reflected on how far they had come. The initial doubts and judgments from others had been hard to navigate, but he had proven to himself and others that he could do it. He thought about Emma and the decision to end their relationship. It had been painful, but it was the right choice. He needed someone who would support his commitment to Emma, not someone who would stand in the way. He hadn't started dating again, focusing all his energy on Emma and his job, but he felt hopeful about the future. James also made an effort to stay connected with other parents he met at the daycare and in the parenting classes he had taken. Building a support network was important, and he found comfort in sharing experiences and advice with others who understood what he was going through. As Emma grew, so did the bond between them. She became more expressive, her personality shining through with each passing day. James loved watching her discover the world around her and made sure to be there for every milestone, big or small. One Saturday, they went to the park. James watched with pride as Emma ran around, her laughter echoing as she chased a butterfly. Another mother with a toddler struck up a conversation with James. "Your daughter is adorable," she said with a smile. "How old is she?" "Thanks," James replied, smiling back. "She just turned 2. She looks very happy," the woman observed. "You're doing a great job." James nodded, feeling a surge of pride. "Thanks. It's been a learning experience, but I wouldn't change it for anything." As they watched their children play, James realized how much his life had changed since the night he found Emma. It had been a whirlwind of emotions and challenges, but it had also brought him immense joy and fulfillment. That night, after Emma fell asleep, James took a moment to write in a journal he had started keeping. It was a way to process his thoughts and document their journey together. He wrote about their day at the park, the conversations he had, and the pride he felt watching Emma grow. In one entry, he wrote, "Finding Emma was the most unexpected blessing. Every day is a new adventure, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be her father. We've faced challenges, but we've also found so much happiness. I know there's more to come, and I'm ready for it." As he closed the journal and turned off the light, he felt a deep sense of peace. He knew there would be more obstacles ahead, but he was confident in his ability to face them with Emma by his side. He was ready to face whatever the future held for him and Emma. As the weeks turned into months, James continued to navigate the challenges of being a single father and the financial instability that came with it. He leaned on the support of his community, his neighbors, and the charity home, grateful for every little bit of help they received. One afternoon, as James was leaving the restaurant after his shift, his boss, Chef Tony, called him into the office. James's heart raced, wondering if there was another problem he had to face. "James, you've been doing an excellent job here," Chef Tony began, smiling warmly. "Your dedication and hard work haven't gone unnoticed. I'd like to offer you a promotion to sous chef." James's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? Thank you, Chef. I don't know what to say." "Just keep doing what you're doing," Chef Tony said, clapping him on the back. "You've earned it." The promotion came with a pay raise, which was a huge relief for James. It wasn't a solution to all his problems, but it was a step in the right direction. He felt a renewed sense of hope and pride in his work. With his new position, James was able to stabilize his finances a bit more. He paid off some debts that had piled up and started a small savings account for Emma's future. He knew they still had a long way to go, but it felt good to be making progress. Despite the challenges, James and Emma found ways to enjoy life. They continued their weekend adventures, exploring new parks, visiting the zoo, and even taking a short trip to the beach. Emma's laughter and excitement made every moment worth it. One night, after closing the restaurant, James sat with Emma in their favorite corner. The restaurant was quiet, and they enjoyed the moment of peace together. "How's everything going out here?" James asked, sliding into a seat next to Sarah. "Great," Sarah replied, smiling. "Everyone loves the new place." "You did it again, James." Emma nodded, her face lighting up with excitement. "Dad is amazing. I told everyone this place has my name too." James laughed, wrapping an arm around her. "You're my inspiration, Emma. All of this is for you." As the second restaurant thrived, James felt a sense of fulfillment and achievement he had never experienced before. He had turned his passion into a successful business and could provide for his family in a way he had always dreamed of. Despite the hectic pace, James made sure to spend quality time with Sarah and Emma. They had regular family dinners at home, movie nights, and weekend outings. He wanted to ensure that no matter how successful the restaurant became, his family would remain his priority. One night, after putting Emma to bed, James sat with Sarah on the couch, planning their wedding. Emma climbed into James's lap and looked up at him with big, curious eyes. "Dad, what's a wedding?" James smiled and gently explained. "A wedding is a special day when two people who love each other very much promise to be together forever. Sarah and I are going to have a wedding soon." Emma's face lit up with excitement. "Can I go?" "Of course you can, sweetheart," Sarah said, laughing. "You're going to be a very important part of our wedding. When the wedding day arrived, the sun was shining, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. James stood at the altar, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. He looked at Emma, who was dressed in a cute flower girl dress, holding a small bouquet of flowers. She waved at him, her smile bright and reassuring. As the music began, James's heart skipped a beat as he saw Sarah walking down the aisle. She looked radiant in her wedding dress, her eyes fixed on him. When she reached his side, they exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through all of life's challenges. After the ceremony, they celebrated with a reception full of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt speeches. James's friends and family welcomed Sarah with open arms, and Emma was the center of attention, beaming with happiness. As the night came to an end, James and Sarah sat together, watching Emma play with her new friends. James wrapped an arm around Sarah's waist, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "We did it," he said softly. "We're a family." Sarah smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Yes, we are, and I couldn't be happier." Their new beginning was full of promise and hope. They continued to support Emma in every step of the way, with Sarah's medical expertise and James's unwavering dedication. Emma thrived, surprising everyone with her resilience and determination. As the years passed, James and Sarah built a life together filled with love, laughter, and countless memories. They faced challenges, celebrated triumphs, and cherished the simple moments that made life so beautiful. James knew they were exactly where they were meant to be, and he couldn't have been happier. Their new beginning was just the start of a beautiful journey, and he looked forward to every moment of it with Sarah and Emma by his side. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm for James, Sarah, and Emma. Their new home was everything they had hoped for, and James's restaurants were thriving. The future looked bright, and the challenges of the past seemed like distant memories. However, everything changed one afternoon when Maria unexpectedly reappeared. James was at the restaurant, overseeing the lunch rush, when he saw her walk in. At first, he thought he was imagining things, but when she approached him, it was clear that Maria was back. "James, can we talk?" she asked, her voice hesitant. James felt a surge of emotions, anger, confusion, and a tinge of curiosity. It had been years since they last saw each other, and he had moved on. Seeing her now brought back memories he thought he had left behind. "Maria, what are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "I know this is unexpected," she said, looking down at her feet. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I wanted to apologize for everything. I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm really sorry." James sighed, unsure of how to respond. "It's been a long time, Maria. Why now?" Maria looked up, her eyes filled with regret. "I've been in therapy, working on myself. I realized how much I hurt you and Emma, and I wanted to make amends. I miss you, James. I miss what we had." James felt a pang of sympathy, but quickly pushed it aside. "A lot has changed since then. I'm married now, and Emma and I have moved on." Maria's face fell, but she nodded. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to say it." Before James could respond, Sarah walked in, carrying a tray of desserts. She froze when she saw Maria, her eyes narrowing. "Is everything okay, James?" James turned to Sarah, grateful for her presence. "Sarah, this is Maria. She came to apologize for everything that happened." Sarah set down the tray, her expression cautious. "I see. Maria, it's nice to meet you, but you need to understand that James and Emma are my family now. We've built a life together, and we're happy." Maria nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I'm sorry for intruding. I just needed to say my piece. I'll go now." As Maria walked away, James felt a mix of relief and unease. He turned to Sarah, who was watching him closely. "Are you okay?" she asked. James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't expect this. I'm not sure what to think." Sarah placed a hand on his arm. "It's okay to feel conflicted, but remember, we have a good life now. Don't let the past disrupt what we've built." James nodded, feeling more secure thanks to Sarah's words. "You're right. Thank you, Sarah." That night, James and Sarah sat down to talk about what had happened. Emma was in bed, and the house was quiet. James explained the encounter with Maria, and Sarah listened patiently. "I understand why you feel conflicted," Sarah said, "but we need to protect what we have. Emma doesn't need that kind of disruption in her life." James agreed, feeling more sure about his decision. "You're right. I need to put our family first. Maria's apology doesn't change what happened or what's best for us now." In the days that followed, James couldn't help but think about Maria's visit. He appreciated her apology, but he knew he couldn't let her back into their lives. The risk of reopening old wounds was too great, and Emma's well-being was his priority. One afternoon, as Emma played in the yard, James and Sarah sat on the porch, enjoying a rare moment of peace. James turned to Sarah, taking her hand. "Thank you for being my rock through all of this," he said. "I know Maria's return stirred up a lot of old feelings, but you've helped me see what's important." Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand. "We've come so far, James. We've built a life we can be proud of. I trust you'll make the right decisions for our family." James nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I promise I'll always put our family first. Maria is part of the past, and our future is here with you and Emma." As they watched Emma play, James felt a renewed sense of clarity. He knew that the life they had built together was worth protecting, and he was determined to keep his family safe and happy. In the weeks that followed, life returned to normal. Maria's visit became a distant memory, and James focused on the future. He and Sarah continued to work hard at the restaurants, balancing their professional lives with their commitment to Emma. They made time for family outings, enjoyed quiet nights at home, and celebrated every milestone in Emma's life. One Saturday, they decided to take a trip to the beach. It was a beautiful day, and Emma was excited to build sandcastles and play in the waves. As they drove to the coast, James felt a sense of peace wash over him. This was his family, and he was grateful for every moment they shared. At the beach, they spent the day laughing and playing. Emma's joy was contagious, and James couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. As the sun began to set, they sat together on a blanket, watching the waves. "This is perfect," Sarah said, resting her head on James's shoulder. "I wouldn't change this for anything." James kissed the top of her head, feeling the same way. "Me neither. We've come so far, and I'm grateful for everything we have." Emma snuggled between them, her eyes heavy with sleep. "I love you, Mom and Dad." "We love you too, Emma," James said, his heart full as they watched the sunset. James knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. The challenges of the past had only made them stronger, and their bond was unbreakable. No matter what the future held, they would face it together. James's encounter with Maria had reminded him how much he had grown and how much he had to be grateful for. He had a loving wife, a beautiful daughter, and a life full of happiness and stability. He was determined to protect that at all costs, ensuring that their future was as bright as the present. With Sarah and Emma by his side, James felt ready to face anything that came their way. They had built a life together, rich in love and support, and he knew that nothing could come between them. His family was his greatest achievement, and he would cherish and protect it always. The years passed, and Emma grew into a beautiful and intelligent young woman. Today was her 18th birthday, and the house was filled with excitement. James had planned a special dinner to celebrate this milestone. As he looked at Emma, he couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of pride and love. She had become everything he had hoped for and more. During the celebration, Emma laughed and joked with her friends, enjoying the moment. James and Sarah watched from a distance, their hearts full. After everyone had left, James asked Emma to join him on the porch for a talk. It was time to share a story he had kept to himself for too long. "Emma," James began, taking a deep breath, "there's something important I need to tell you. It's about your past and how you came into my life." Emma looked at him, her eyes serious and understanding. "I've been waiting for this, Dad." James smiled, feeling a mix of relief and nervousness. He started from the beginning, recounting the night he found her in the trash and the immediate connection he felt. He told her about the struggles and joys of raising her and how she had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. "I'm not your biological father," James said gently, watching her face for a reaction. "I found you when you were just a baby, abandoned and alone. I couldn't leave you there. I had to take you in and give you the love and life you deserved." Emma listened quietly, her expression calm. When he finished, she reached out and took his hand. "Dad, I've known for a while," she said softly, a small smile on her lips. "I mean, come on, we don't look anything alike. But what matters is that you're my dad in every way that counts. I love you, and nothing will change that." James felt a surge of emotion and hugged her tightly, his eyes filling with tears. "I love you too, Emma, more than anything." As if the night couldn't get any more emotional, Sarah joined them on the porch, her face radiant with a smile. "I have some news," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We're going to have a baby." Emma's eyes widened with joy, and she hugged Sarah, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm going to be a big sister. This is amazing." The months that followed were filled with joy and anticipation. Emma, excited about the new addition to the family, took an active role in preparing for the baby's arrival. She and James grew even closer as they painted the nursery and assembled furniture together. With James's support, they decided to find out the truth. James used his connections from his days on the force to start the investigation. It was a difficult process, filled with dead ends and frustrating delays, but they persevered. After months of searching, they finally uncovered the tragic story. Emma's biological mother, a woman named Angela, had been trapped in an abusive marriage. Her husband was violent and often threatened her life. In a desperate attempt to save her daughter from a life of abuse, Angela had left Emma in a place where she hoped someone would find her and give her a better life. Tragically, Angela's husband found out about her actions and, in a fit of rage, took her life shortly after. Emma was devastated by the news, but she also felt a strange sense of peace. "She did it to save me," she said quietly, tears in her eyes. "She gave me a chance at a better life." James hugged her tightly, his own heart aching for the woman who had sacrificed everything for her daughter. "She did, Emma, and I'm so grateful she did. Thanks to her, I got to have you as my daughter." In time, Emma came to terms with her mother's decision. She forgave her, understanding that Angela's desperate act had been one of love and protection. She found solace in the incredible family she had and in the love that surrounded her every day. As the months passed, the anticipation for the new baby grew. James, Sarah, and Emma shared countless moments of laughter and love as they prepared for the new family member. Finally, the day arrived, and Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Jacob, and he was the perfect addition to their family. Emma adored her little brother and took her role as a big sister very seriously. She helped with feedings, changed diapers, and spent hours playing with Jacob, her heart full of love for him. James and Sarah watched with pride, knowing that their family was now complete. One night, as they all gathered in the living room, James looked around and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They had been through so much, but they had come out stronger and more united than ever. "We've built something amazing here," James said softly, looking at Sarah and then at Emma. "I'm so grateful for each of you." Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand. "We're grateful for you too, James. You've brought so much love into our lives." Emma looked at her little brother, then at her parents, and said with a bright smile, "I couldn't have asked for a better family. I love you all so much." James felt his heart swell with emotion. They had faced many challenges, but they had done so with love and strength. Their journey had been filled with ups and downs, but it had also been filled with joy and fulfillment. As time passed, Jacob grew, and the family continued to create memories together. They spent weekends exploring nature, having picnics, and enjoying every moment. James continued to work in his restaurants, which were more successful than ever. Sarah balanced her work at the hospital with her dedication to the family, and Emma excelled in everything she did, whether at school or in her role as a big sister. One afternoon, while at the park, James watched Emma and Jacob play together. Sarah walked up to him and took his hand, and together they watched their children with love and pride. "Can you believe everything we've been through?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with wonder. "It's incredible," James replied, his voice trembling slightly, "but I wouldn't change a thing about our journey. Everything we've been through has led us here, and I'm grateful for every moment." As the sun set, bathing the park in a warm golden light. James knew that his family was his greatest treasure. No matter what challenges the future held, he knew they would face them together with love and determination. As they watched Emma help Jacob onto the swing, James felt a deep peace. Their journey had been long and filled with obstacles, but every step had been worth it. He had by his side an amazing wife, 2 wonderful children, and a life full of love. As they headed home that night, James tucked Jacob into bed and then went to Emma's room to say goodnight. He sat by her side and hugged her tightly. "I love you so much, Emma," he said softly. "I love you too, Dad," she replied, hugging him back. "Thank you for everything you do for us." James kissed her forehead and turned off the light, feeling a deep and lasting satisfaction. He walked out of Emma's room and found Sarah in the hallway, a smile on her face. "Is everything okay?" she asked, taking his hand. "Yes, everything is perfect," James replied, hugging her. "And it always will be as long as we're together." Together, they headed to their bedroom, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that their love and their family were the most important things in their lives. With Sarah and their children by his side, James felt that he could face anything, and he knew that the future would be bright and full of possibilities. And so, their new life as a united family continued, with the promise of more adventures, laughter, and love in the days to come. Leave your opinion in the comments and don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss out on new exciting stories. Also, these stories on your screen might excite you. Watch and be happy. See you next time.